is sharpening his quill for a new edition of his book set to reveal huge.
What started as a simple birthday post quickly turned into something no one expected. Meghan Markle shared glossy celebration photos meant to capture confidence, elegance, and that familiar Hollywood polish. But instead of admiration, the internet did what it always does best. It paused, it zoomed in, and then it started asking questions. Not about the dress, not about the party, but about something far more personal. Something people suddenly believed didn't add up. Within hours, comments shifted from compliments to curiosity. Viewers began comparing the images to older photos, lining them up side by side, analyzing facial features, posture, and even lighting. The conversation moved fast, and before anyone realized it, the focus wasn't on the celebration anymore. It was on Meghan herself. More specifically, on her age, or at least the age she's publicly claimed for years. And while that might sound harmless at first, the speculation didn't stay mild for long. Across social media, users began resurfacing old interviews, acting profiles, and early casting listings. Some pointed out that the numbers didn't always match. Others claimed school timelines felt slightly off. A few even circulated screenshots of documents they said told a different story. None of it was verified. Most of it was rumor. But in the attention economy, rumors don't need proof to spread. They just need momentum. And that momentum arrived the moment one name entered the conversation: Tom Bower. For those who follow royal coverage closely, the name alone carries weight. Bower isn't known for soft opinions or flattering portraits. He's built his reputation on tearing into powerful figures with a forensic level of detail, often leaving controversy in his wake. So when reports began circulating that he was quietly researching Meghan again, people paid attention. According to chatter in media circles, Bower had been telling contacts that certain parts of Meghan's public timeline didn't align. And the most explosive claim of all was that her official age might not be the full truth. Reports claimed that Bower believed he had uncovered documents that contradicted Meghan's public birth year. Insiders alleged he described finding records that didn't match the narrative the public had been given. Some even whispered about a birth certificate that raised questions about dates and details. None of this was released publicly. None of it was independently confirmed. But Bower's reputation alone was enough to send the story into overdrive. Because when someone like him hints at something, people assume there's more beneath the surface. Soon, headlines began repeating the same phrase in different forms. Tom Bower claims he has proof. Tom Bower suggests discrepancies. Tom Bower hints at a hidden timeline. Television panels debated it endlessly. Social media dissected every new appearance Meghan made. Some viewers insisted she appeared older than her stated age. Others pushed back, saying stress, lighting, and relentless scrutiny could explain everything. Even defenders admitted the timing couldn't have been worse. Journalists, familiar with Bower's work, pointed out that he isn't known for exaggeration. They described him as methodical, relentless, and almost obsessive when it comes to documentation. One commentator famously said he studies public figures the way forensic accountants study fraud. Line by line, date by date, without mercy. And while critics accused him of targeting Meghan unfairly, supporters argued that he only followed records, not emotions. Behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. People who claimed to have spoken with Bower said he'd long suspected Meghan of carefully managing her image. But that this alleged age discrepancy was the most explosive claim yet. According to those accounts, early school records, job listings, and background checks didn't always align with her official birth year. One document in particular, rumored to be a birth certificate, was described as having details that didn't match expectations. Again, none of this was verified. But the lack of confirmation didn't slow the story down. It sped it up. Meghan's team stayed silent. No statement. No denial. No clarification. And in the modern media landscape, silence rarely calms anything. Instead, it invites interpretation. Some argued she was rising above baseless speculation. Others believed the quiet response only fueled suspicion. Online comparisons exploded. Clips from Meghan's early Suits interviews circulated alongside recent appearances. Commenters debated whether her aging timeline made sense. Casting directories from the early 2000s resurfaced, with users claiming listed ages conflicted with her current narrative. Supporters were quick to point out that Hollywood has always played fast and loose with age. Actors shaving off years isn't new. It's practically industry tradition. But critics countered that this wasn't about casting tactics. They argued it was about honesty, transparency, and a public figure who had repeatedly emphasized authenticity. Royal analysts chimed in, warning that if any discrepancy existed, even an innocent one, it could spark a serious credibility issue. Not because of vanity, but because trust is everything in royal narratives. As the debate raged, reports surfaced, claiming Meghan felt ambushed. Sources alleged she believed the scrutiny was cruel, sexist, and rooted in personal vendettas rather than facts. Some said her inner circle was scrambling to redirect headlines, calling in favors with sympathetic outlets. But the story refused to fade. It had grown beyond gossip. It had become a full-blown media storm. Then Tom Bower appeared again. This time more deliberate, more controlled. During a televised appearance, he referenced documents that conflicted with one another. He didn't declare a lie. He simply pointed out discrepancies and let the implication hang in the air. A week later, he doubled down with a written statement, saying he was merely presenting what he'd found and that interpretation was up to the public. He wasn't backing away, but he wasn't revealing everything either. The moment that reignited everything came when Bower allegedly referenced a second document. Same name, same parents. Different year. The clip went viral almost instantly. Commentators demanded answers. Was it a clerical error? A reissued record? Or something more complicated? Bower refused to clarify. He simply said people could draw their own conclusions. And with that, he walked away, leaving chaos behind. Royal historians weighed in, explaining that lineage, documentation, and chronology have always mattered deeply behind palace walls. Even minor inconsistencies could raise eyebrows. That shifted the narrative again. What if these questions weren't new? What if they'd already been examined quietly long before the public ever knew? No proof supported that idea. But whispers don't need proof. They need curiosity. And curiosity was everywhere. Through it all, Meghan remained silent. No interviews, no posts, no explanations. Sympathy grew. So did obsession. An anonymous insider claimed she felt hunted, saying this wasn't gossip anymore, but an invasive excavation of her childhood. Others argued that powerful women are always scrutinized more harshly. And yet the fascination only intensified in a final primetime appearance. Bower laid out timelines, archival notes, and gaps he claimed deserved answers. Nothing definitive. Nothing illegal. Just questions. When asked directly whether he believed Meghan was hiding her real age, he paused before delivering a line that would echo across headlines. He said he believed she had a story she didn't want told, and that he intended to tell it. That was all it took. Not proof, not confirmation. Just implication, as one columnist later wrote, maybe the exact number doesn't matter at all. Maybe what matters is that the world became obsessed with the idea that Meghan might not be exactly who she appears to be. And that obsession reveals far more about public perception than any certificate ever could. For Tom Bower, the mystery remains unfinished. For Meghan, the silence has only deepened the myth. And for everyone watching, one question still hangs in the air, unanswered and unresolved. Who is Meghan Markle, really? And that question refused to fade. In the days that followed, the story stopped being about documents entirely and became something bigger, something harder to pin down. It turned into a referendum on image power. And who gets to control their own narrative once the world decides it wants answers? Every new headline wasn't asking for proof anymore. It was asking for reaction. And the absence of one became the loudest response of all. Media analysts began pointing out a familiar pattern. Whenever public figures choose silence, the vacuum gets filled fast. Podcasts speculated. Tabloids recycled old material with new angles. Commentary channels framed the situation as a psychological chess match, questioning whether Meghan was waiting for the right moment to respond, or deliberately refusing to dignify what she saw as nonsense. Some argued that any response would only legitimize the rumors. Others believed the lack of pushback allowed speculation to harden into belief for certain audiences. Meanwhile, defenders grew increasingly vocal. They accused critics of weaponizing age in a way that male public figures rarely face. They highlighted how often women in entertainment are judged for aging at all, let alone aging on schedule. Several commentators stressed that even if inconsistencies existed in old Hollywood paperwork, that alone proved nothing. Casting agencies had adjusted ages for decades, and actors often went along with it just to survive in the industry. To them, the outrage said more about cultural obsession than about Meghan herself. But critics weren't backing down either. Quietly, the discussion drifted toward the palace. Former royal correspondents speculated about background checks, vetting processes, and the intense scrutiny anyone marrying into the royal family undergoes. They were careful with their words, emphasizing there was no evidence of wrongdoing. Still, the suggestion alone was enough to spark another wave of intrigue. If discrepancies existed, even innocent ones, would they have been noticed long ago? And if so, why was the public only hearing about them now? Tom Bower, for his part, seemed content letting the storm swirl without offering resolution. People close to him suggested this was deliberate, that he understood the power of unanswered questions, that once doubt enters the conversation, it's nearly impossible to erase completely. Others accused him of chasing headlines, of blurring the line between investigation and insinuation. But even his critics admitted one thing. He had succeeded in shifting the conversation, and once shifted, it wasn't going back. As weeks passed, the intensity slowly began to cool, but the idea lingered. It resurfaced whenever Meghan appeared in public, in comment sections, in late-night monologues, in think pieces dissecting celebrity identity. The story no longer needed new information to survive. It had become self-sustaining, fueled by curiosity and repetition rather than discovery. And that's where the controversy ultimately landed. Not with a revelation, not with a confession, but with a cultural question. In an age where every detail of a public figure's life is searchable, screenshot, and endlessly debated, how much truth is ever enough? And who decides when a story is complete? Meghan Markle never addressed the rumors directly. Tom Bower never released definitive proof. No document emerged to settle the debate once and for all. Instead, the narrative froze in a state of permanent speculation, a mystery without an ending. Because sometimes the most powerful scandals aren't built on facts or lies, but on uncertainty. And once uncertainty takes hold, it doesn't need answers to survive. It only needs attention, and that uncertainty became the lasting legacy of the entire saga. Long after the headlines cooled and the panels moved on to the next controversy, the question still lingered in the background, quietly resurfacing whenever Meghan's name trended for any reason at all. It didn't matter what the original topic was. A speech, an appearance, a project announcement. Somewhere in the comments, someone would bring it back up. Not with proof. Not with new evidence. Just with a reminder that doubt had once been planted. What made this situation so unusual was that nothing ever officially happened. No court filing. No public correction. No dramatic revelation. Just a slow erosion of certainty. And in the digital age, that can be more damaging than any confirmed scandal. Because certainty allows closure. Doubt keeps people watching. Some media observers later argued that this was exactly why the story caught fire in the first place. It wasn't about age. It was about control. Meghan had always been portrayed, both by supporters and critics, as someone intensely aware of how she was perceived. Every interview, every appearance, every word carefully chosen. So when a narrative emerged suggesting there were parts of her story she hadn't fully shared, it clashed sharply with the image she had presented. That tension alone was enough to keep the conversation alive. Others took a harsher view. They claimed the obsession itself was the real problem, that a woman's worth, credibility, for honesty were being reduced to a number on a document. That, even if disputed, changed nothing about her actions or achievements. To them, the entire episode was a case study in how quickly curiosity can turn into fixation, and how easily speculation can masquerade as investigation. Tom Bauer never clarified his endgame. He didn't confirm a book release centered on the issue. He didn't retract his implications either. He simply moved on to other subjects, leaving this one suspended in the public imagination. For some, that silence confirmed their suspicions. For others, it proved there was nothing solid to begin with. The same facts, two completely different interpretations. And Meghan, she continued forward. Projects launched. Appearances resumed. Life, at least outwardly, went on. But the shadow of the controversy never fully disappeared. Not because it was proven, but because it was unresolved. And unresolved stories have a way of attaching themselves to public figures, whether they deserve it or not. In the end, no one could say for certain whether there had ever been a discrepancy at all, or whether the entire thing was built on industry quirks, internet exaggeration, and the amplifying power of a famous name. What was clear, though, was how quickly perception could become reality once enough people started asking the same question. So the story didn't end with a document, a statement, or a reveal. It ended exactly where it began, with speculation, with silence, and with a public still debating not just how old Meghan Markle is, but how much of anyone's story we're truly entitled to know. And maybe that's why this story never truly closed, because it stopped being about Meghan Markle as a person and turned into something much broader. A mirror held up to celebrity culture itself, to the way audiences consume narratives, question authenticity, and demand access to every private detail under the guise of accountability. Once that switch flips, it's almost impossible to turn it off. What lingered most wasn't outrage, but suspicion, the kind that doesn't shout, doesn't accuse outright, but quietly hums in the background. The kind that resurfaces in comment sections, reaction videos, and speculative threads years later, long after the original spark has burned out. It didn't matter that no hard evidence ever emerged. The idea had already taken root, and ideas, once planted, don't need proof to survive. They just need repetition. Some critics later admitted that even if an age discrepancy had existed, it would have changed nothing materially. Meghan's career, her marriage, her public positions would all remain exactly the same. Yet the fascination endured, because the real hook was never the number. It was the possibility that a carefully constructed public image might have cracks. And for audiences conditioned to search for flaws in people placed on pedestals, that possibility was irresistible. Others argued the episode exposed a deeper discomfort with women who refused to be easily categorized. Too independent for some, too controlled for others, too outspoken, too private. In that sense, the controversy functioned less as an investigation and more as a projection, a way for the public to wrestle with their own expectations of who Meghan Markle was supposed to be, and what she was allowed to withhold. Time passed, but the question never fully disappeared. It simply lost urgency. It became background noise rather than breaking news. And that may have been the most revealing outcome of all. Not that the truth was uncovered, but that the world eventually moved on without it. No resolution, no correction, no final word. Because sometimes the most viral stories aren't driven by answers. They're driven by the space where answers should be. And in that space, imagination does the rest. So whether the rumors were exaggerated, misunderstood, or entirely unfounded, one thing became undeniably clear. The obsession itself told a story about power, about perception, and about how easily curiosity can transform into controversy when the subject refuses to fill in the blanks. And maybe that's where this really ends. Not with a revelation, but with a reminder. In the age of endless scrutiny, silence isn't empty. It's provocative. And once a question like this enters the public consciousness, it doesn't need confirmation to live on. It just needs people willing to keep asking it.